please direct your attention to the Director of Convocations, Ms. Celia Benson.
Good afternoon. Welcome. Come on in. We have plenty of seats up front, so come on in, seat. A few quick announcements before we get started. There are several musical productions coming up, a theater production, and a lot of art in the next week. So please go on Canvas if you're taking the class for credit. It's all listed right there, all of the approved cultural events that you can go to for credit. Next week's convocation will feature our very own Snow College students from the International Center and the Music and Dance Department. So make sure you not miss that. That'll be really good. And then we're going to open today with a musical number by 3 of our music students, Tom Young, Devin Mitchell, and Spencer Ammett. They are going to perform If I Could Write a Book. And then following their musical number, we'll hear from our guest speaker, Tri Robinson, and we're so pleased to have him with us today. He flew down, he got up early this morning probably before you all were in bed last night, and flew down this morning to be with us from Idaho. So we're very happy to have him. Let me tell you a little bit about him, and then we'll have our music. Tri Robinson is the author of Saving God's Green Earth, which was the first environmental book to challenge believers of faith to consider the environment as a biblical responsibility. Tri is an author that tries to bring change to the world with his 7 published books about environmentalism. This June, a documentary about his farmstead, the Timber Butte, will be released. Tri runs a sustainable farmstead that is used to train people about sustainable agriculture, and it is used for environmental projects as well. He is the director of the I-61 and trains people to take on major world crisis issues. He has a training base in Nicaragua to help train the extremely about sustainability, and we're very happy to have him today. We will turn the time over to the number, and then we'll hear from Tri. Thank you.
All right, thank you. If they ask me, I could write a book about the way you walk and whisper and look. I could write the preface on how we met so the world would never forget. And the simple secret of the plot is just to tell them that I love you a lot. Then the world discovers, as my book ends, how to make 2 lovers a friend. way you walk and whisper and look. I could write the preface on how we met, so the world would never forget. And the simple scene of the plot is just to tell them that I love you a lot. Then the world discovers, as my book ends, how to make two lovers, make two lovers, make two lovers a friend. Thank you very much. Spencer Emmett, Devin Mitchell, my name is Tom Young. Have a good one.
Well, hello. Well, it's good to be here. My name's Tri Robinson. I'm from Boise, as you already heard. It's a great honor and a privilege to be with you guys today. About 4 days ago, or 4 nights ago, I had this dream, and it wasn't like a, but it was an anxious dream. But I was a freshman in college again, and it was. I'm serious. I'm actually serious. I did, and I woke up in a cold sweat. It wasn't like one of those dreams where you like show up in your class and you put your clothes on or anything. It was just, I was just lost, and I was the first day of school. I got to the wrong class, and my dorm room. I couldn't get back to my dorm room. I couldn't figure out who my roommate was. I don't know if you've ever had sort of those feelings of like total inadequacy. But anyway, if you could identify with that. But I remember it. And see, I was a freshman in 1966. So, and it was like yesterday. Time flies. In fact, life flies by. I'm almost 70 years old now. And I just want to say, if there's one thing I can leave with you today is don't waste a minute. Is there a way, by chance, I could get the lights up just a little bit in here? I'd like to see you guys. I don't know if that's possible. Oh, that's much better, thanks. So I remember a couple of things. I mean, first of all, college was tough for me. I don't know if you guys, I suffered as a kid with a learning disability that in the 1960s, they didn't know what it was. Today, it's pretty common. It was called dyslexia, where you see everything sort of backwards, which makes everything, especially reading and math and things like even anything, difficult because everything is backwards. And in those days, they didn't understand disabilities. They didn't understand dyslexia. They just thought you were unintelligent. And school was really tough for me. And I went through, especially junior high school. I mean, junior high was the worst. In fact, I just wrote a book called The Committee for the of Liberty and Johnson, which I'm not going to tell you about, but later I became a junior high school teacher as a result of my junior high school experience, which was a terrible experience. And yet, in my junior high school experience, I had a teacher that changed my life. He spoke into my life. One day I was coming back from the and I was really just so defeated. I was this kid, 12 years old. I was the smallest kid in my class. I couldn't read, felt totally inadequate. I had just like weeks before, I had ridden my bicycle home as fast as I could because I forgot my flute from my phone that day. Hit my mom's pink Cadillac, went over the top, knocked all my teeth out. So I'm the smallest kid in my class. I can't read. I feel stupid. I have no front teeth. And my name is Franklin. That was before my name was Tri. I'm coming back from the counselor's office, and I come back and walk into my English class. English was like the worst class for me because you had to read. And I walked into this class, and there was a teacher there named Mr. Hansen, and he was sitting there, and he recognized the look on my face. And he, as he was, just as I came in, it was class, the bell rang, and everybody was going out, and he says, "Frank, I want you to stay here." And a minute. And I go, oh no, here it comes again. I'm going to get it again. And he sits me down, and he comes over and he sits on the desk next to me. And he says, and he knows what's going on. He says, I want to tell you something. First of all, my name was always Try. It's TR3 because I was actually Franklin Willard Robinson III. So my name is Franklin Willard Robinson III. You know, I play the flute, not anymore because I have no front teeth. I'm the smallest kid in my class. I mean, life, I feel totally dejected. And he sits down and he tells me that I'm going to be a success in life. And he says, I'm going to invest in you if you'll receive it from me. And he taught me how to, you know, legally cheat. Like, read a chapter, going to read the whole thing. I mean, he taught me how to use Cliff Notes and how to take shortcuts. And as a result of Mr. Hanson's experience, I went on to high school, found that I was a pretty good athlete. I could run. I was like Forrest Gump. You know what I mean? I could just run. And I was such a good runner that it got me a scholarship to college, even though I didn't have a foreign language, because you don't do foreign language when you have dyslexia very well. So I come to the College of Idaho. That's the college I was at. First day, freshman, enter into this season of my life feeling like I belong here. And yet, in my heart of hearts, I know that there's something special in me. There's this deep desire in me that I want to change the world. I want to make an impact with my life. And yet education was really tough for me. And so I run into another teacher in my college in my freshman year. And he was actually an English literature teacher that really taught me to love the American West through reading. And just by sheer reading books, I learned I could actually read. The key to learning to read is to read. And I read because I finally found something I enjoyed reading and wanted to know about enough that I was forced to read. And I went through this time in life, and I'm just telling you this story because I want to say that the time that you're in this moment of your life is one of the most important times of your life. And I want to tell you this too, because one thing I am is I became a junior high school teacher for numbers of years, ended up in the ministry. And there's one thing I discovered. I was a biology major, a minor in college, and I majored in education to become a teacher myself. And there's one thing that I learned in those days. One thing happened at college campus, one of the great things that happened to my wife. And I remember, when I met her, I was a senior. She was a freshman, so I knew everything at that point. I finally found somebody that thought I knew everything. I remember the first time I met her, we met at a football game, and afterwards we went out to a coffee shop, and we had hot chocolate together, and we sat there this night, and we talked, and we talked, and we talked about deep things. We talked about real things. And we opened our lives in a way to ask real questions. And I believe that this is a time in your life not to enter status quo. This is a time in your life where you're asking yourself, who am I? And what am I to do with my life? You're here to begin to prepare. In these next 2, maybe 4 years, you will be preparing yourselves for a future. And I want to challenge you that this is a time to ask the questions. This is the time to think. It's to challenge status quo. It's a time to ask those important questions. Am I really? And in the context of that, I discovered really a writing by the Apostle Paul. The Apostle Paul writes at this one point in the book of Romans, in Romans 12, he's talking about coming into God's perfect will for your life. That is, coming into this place to learn what God's will is for your life, to discover who you really are, who He created you to be, not who society wanted you to be or others had expectations of you as becoming, but who He created you to be. It is time to ask those real questions, a time to challenge those thoughts that say, I'm nobody, Or I'm just going to grow up and I'm going to grow into the status quo, live the American dream, 2 cars in the garage, a big screen TV, what is it, 2.1 kids or whatever it is. But to say, Lord, what do you want of my life? And Paul writes in Romans 12, and he says this, he says, that your greatest act of worship is to know God and to give your life to Him and to discover why He created you, why He put you on this earth. Because I want to tell you something right now, there is no accidents. I don't care how you were conceived or where you were conceived or what the circumstance, there is no accidents. If you were not supposed to be on this earth, you wouldn't be here, but you are supposed to be here. And you're not just supposed to be here, but you're supposed to be here right now. And I want to tell you this, that every person in this room is absolutely unique. There's no 2 of you alike. And the great lie is we've got to be the same. We've got to conform to an image that people think that we should be. But God created you uniquely and differently, and He has a perfect will for you. I say that there's 3 things in this life that are the most important and crucial things. That is to discover the one that created you. Number 2, discover why He created you. And number 3, do it with the rest of your life. Today is Earth Day. And this world's in trouble. And much of the problems that are driving the world's big issues today are environmental issues. And I tell you, in this whole conversation of climate change, of the decline of fresh drinking water and the quality, not just the quantity, but now the quality of food sources and the fear of insecurity for food is facing a world in the years to come is crucial. This is not a time to look out for number 1. This is not a time to look out for yourself. It's a time to say, Lord, how can I, based on who I am and the gifting that you've given me, the person that you've made me to be, help me to fully understand that and discover that it would take all inadequacy out of my life, all the fear that I would not be afraid to status quo and go make a difference with my life, because this world needs you. The world's in trouble. The world needs people that would ask those big questions and prepare themselves, even at this moment, for the things that aren't happening today, but the things that are going to be happening 4 years from now. Things are moving fast. Paul, he says, don't think of yourself as being better than you really are, but take an honest evaluation of yourself. Look at yourself. Evaluate yourself. But don't become introspective. Look at yourself in terms of asking those real questions. Who am I really? What was I really made for? How should I invest this incredible gift that I've been given called life? And he goes on and he says, that everybody has different gifts. It's like all the parts of a body, he says. You got the hands and the legs, all these parts. All parts are important, but they all have to work together for this common good. And he talks about being given the gift of prophecy, about teaching, about being a giver and giving generously, about being a leader and being able to taking that responsibility seriously, of showing kindness and having compassion and mercy. We're all wired differently. We all have, different things that drive us inside, but sometimes the world around us pushes us into a direction that's not even really us. He says, discover those things, and then when you discover them, do them. That you might go out into this world and love authentically and give of yourself and make a difference. One of the things, the gift of prophecy, is just like seeing, not the moment, but seeing a little bit of what's what's yet. I call it, in Idaho, we call it leading the duck. You know, if you're shooting a duck, you don't aim at the duck. A duck flies fast, and we're living in a time and a culture that's moving very fast. So you have to aim out ahead of it that you might meet it at that moment. And so the question is not only, Lord, who am I, and how can I play, and how can I engage, and how can I get involved, but what's coming 4 years from now when I graduate? What should I be preparing for? The world needs you. The world is desperate for an educated people that are saying, I want my life to be here for the sake of humanity and for the sake of this earth. It's an important moment. And I would just leave you this morning with that challenge. Don't just let these days go by, but ask the real questions. Find on friends. Take quiet walks. Ask the Lord himself, but don't just ask, listen. And I promise you, he'll speak. That you might have wisdom and then the courage to move into doing things that you never dreamed that you would do. That's my challenge. I'm going to take the next few minutes. I'm interested to hear like comments, if you have questions. Yes. You know, one of the things about the environment, I think we see, and I don't know where you guys are. I come out of evangelical Christianity, but because of the environment, I found myself with leaders of all kinds of faiths around the world. Several years ago, I was at Windsor Castle with Prince Philip, with leaders from every major religion in the world. For some reason, the environment it's a global problem, and so it's drawing global leaders together. Whoops. And everyone's asking that basic question. But one of the things that we realize, and I'm just speaking from my life, you guys are in that, but there's a lot of faiths. I know, at least in the Christian faith, that issues like global warming are conceived or perceived as being kind of liberal issues. And so a lot of places of faith push back on that. I would say we've got to come to grips with the understanding that these are real problems. And the first that are going to suffer are going to be the poor. The poor are living in the low-lying regions of the world. Places like Bangladesh, as glaciers melt, these people are going to be waist deep in water. Their lands are already becoming ruined. So the first thing is to get into reality. The second thing is to use your influence in that sphere of faith that you're in to say real. If you ask me, I speak as a Christian, I say I believe that Christianity needs to be on the front line of the crisis. It needs to be on the front line of hunger. It needs to be on the front line of health. And the health crisis, I'm training medics to go into the Ebola crisis, and our medics were in Haiti right after the earthquake. I mean, these are real needs. And so if we're in denial and we're just trying to live this status quo life and saying, these problems are too big and they're too overwhelming, what can I do? So you do nothing. That's not going to solve the problem. You've got to have faith that, all things are possible with God. And that God can put you in places like I told you my story, to think of what has happened in my life and the influence that I've been able to have, even though I started into this world in a very rough way. You know, God can use you and will use you if you just ask. But you also got to train. You've got to become educated. I would engage in fields where I knew that those places, you know, don't become a doctor to get rich. Become a doctor to help humanity. You know, don't become a teacher because you got the summers off. Become a teacher because you can be Peter Hansen that impacts and empowers young people's lives so that they break free of all of the things kind of binding them and holding them back. Go for it. Use this life and use it well. Yeah.
What convinced you that these environmental issues are important and real?
You know, it's funny because I love. I'm a rancher. I'm a hunter. I'm a fisherman. I spent years building backcountry trails with a team of mules. When I love the wilderness, but I never equated that with the crisis that's in the world. And what happened with me was I realized, bottom line, an environment that was really in decline was doing to the poor of the world, especially when it came to the area of fresh water, just the pollution, the loss of topsoil, all these things. All of a sudden, I realized this is something that I can't turn my back on. The other thing is that I realized that, you know, people end up doing desperate things, and so much of the crisis of the world starts upriver, in a sense. Haiti is a good example. In Haiti, we've watched, there's a corrupt government. Because there's a corrupt government, the people are being exploited. People become desperate to the point, instead of growing crops, they go up and they start cutting all of the timber. Haiti was a beautiful country at one point. In fact, the Dominican Republic, and from space, you can actually see a line. Literally, they're the same island. Half is Haiti, half is the Dominican Republic. From space, you can actually see that line because this side, the Haitian side, has been deforested. And so the people have gone up, they've started cutting down the trees. They've turned those trees into charcoal because it's their only form of energy to cook or to keep their homes warm. The monsoons come. These are environmental issues. The monsoons come, they wash off the topsoil. Pretty soon people can't grow food. They become more desperate. A peasant farmer will sell his daughter into prostitution in hopes of saving the other two at home. And so now we have human trafficking. And so by going upriver, we find that the major crises of the world are really, a lot of them are being driven by a world that is not sustainable. And so coming into these, you begin to understand sustainable living, sustainable agriculture, sustainable water systems. These are important. They're critical for the cause of humanity in the future. The other thing I would say is don't fear. In the 1960s, we thought the whole world was coming down. We thought the world population would double. Well, it has doubled, actually. But we're still here. You know, and don't operate out of fear. Don't cower down, but rise up in this moment and say, we can make a difference if we unite and we use our gifting and we all come to this place of operating in the gifts that we've been given. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's how I came to it. I was a biology teacher, actually, and I realized, I started looking at biology. A lot of scientists, they like become atheists. And I go, how can you do that? Because I would look at the anatomy of a flower. I was teaching physiology and anatomy, and I was just going, this is all a miracle. I mean, none of this can be an accident. I mean, you got to be like, it takes It takes, you have to be like, it's stupid to think that it's an accident. Once you look so closely and you go, there is no way that this could be an accident. And if it's not an accident, then I'm not an accident. And you're not an accident. You are a miracle. And I just came to realize that, not only that, but through the Bible, I was challenged at one point by my kids. They were in college. They said, why is it that we have never heard a message on the environment preached from church? And so it challenged me because I happened to be a pastor at the time. I went and I started researching the Bible, and I realized it was all over the place. And it was like we were actually commissioned to care for creation as God's people. And so I started preaching it. I got in a lot of trouble for a while because it was kind of pushed up against this conservative mentality of a lot of the people in my church, saying, we don't, if you're an environmentalist, then you're a liberal. But this is not a liberal issue. This is an issue of the salvation of this earth and humanity. We've got to care. Yes?
So I love science and biology and stuff just like you. And I find the topic of like science and religion to be like very interesting, especially to see like different points of view. I watch like a lot of debates, just like on the internet between believers who are scientists and non-believers who are scientists, and for the most part, the scientists who lack of faith, they're debating these scientists that have a faith, and the scientists that have a faith, for the most part, are the ones that are denying climate change, they deny evolution, they deny the age of, like, they claim it's a younger perspective, and I find for the most part they are like evangelical Christians, and so you're kind of alone.
I'm an enigma.
Yeah, you're a minority in your faith. So what kind of approach do you take? How do you kind of get the word out? How do you get people to, in your faith, to trust science more, trust facts, trust evidence, and maybe not take it to be a science textbook, but still, hold their faith, which is great. So like, you kind of understand like what I'm.
I totally get it, man. I'm living in that world. Yeah, and I think you do what I've been trying to say here, and it's what you need to be doing in this of your life. You need to think. You just not lay down and take what's told to you, but you need to challenge it. You've got professors here that will, talk to you for hours and hours. It turns into a debate. It turns into a debate maybe, but still you're learning and you're thinking. You might be wrong. And you need to admit that. Be right. I had to look at one book, which was the Bible, and all of a sudden I realized it was all there all the time. Science and faith is not in conflict. It's all a miracle. And I just think you have to do what you're obviously doing. I can see that you're a good thinker, and just don't quit. Because the truth is, I think I've been used in a great way to change my tribe. I've been all over the world speaking and hanging out with people of faith. I've been persecuted in many ways, criticized in many ways, but I also feel like I've made a difference. It's taken a while. Yes?
Through like letters to the editor, and the person that was writing from the other side kept saying, God created the earth for us. Why would he wipe everything out with climate change? Like that makes no sense. And the earth is ours to use. What would you say to that?
Well, first of all, there's one earth. We better take care of it. It's funny, I don't have time to get really into that question. In fact, later today I am, and if I'm speaking to here, but I can track that whole program for you and how that kind of happens and how it develops. There's this whole eschatological view that it's all going to burn anyway. But the point is that there's only one earth, and we're called to be stewards of it and care for it. And give me your question again, because I don't want to miss it.
Essentially, this person was saying there's, well, also...
Why? Oh, why? Yeah, like there is this attitude.
We live in a place where environmentalism is really a four-letter word, and if you say that, then immediately a lot of ears are going to just completely close. And the argument was, what environmental issues and climate, why would we have to worry about these things? God's in control.
Yeah, well, in my book, the book I'm reading, there is a point where the world starts winding down, and there's going to be plagues, pestilence, all the things that are actually characteristic of climate change. Actually, there's drought, famine, those things. There are things that we're moving towards because of one reason is because of a changing. But it also in my book says it's not a sit or give up or just lay down and wait for heaven. This is a time to engage and get involved, especially with suffering humanity, so I know the world is in trouble. The world is going in a port. It doesn't mean to quit, and it doesn't mean, to create the polarized opposites of conservatives and liberals. This is everybody's problem, and somehow we've got to break those barriers. So. Well, I think we're done. I think my time's up, but I sure appreciate you guys. I sure thank you for the opportunity to be with you guys today. So, have a good day.